two friends stand on the exact same street corner, request a ride to the exact same destination, within seconds of each other. One person's app shows $14. The other person's app shows $19. Same pickup point, same drop-off point, same car that will eventually show up, same driver, even in some documented cases. The $5 gap isn't a mistake, and it isn't random either. It's the visible result of a pricing system that quietly considers far more about each individual rider than most people ever realize. And once you understand what's actually feeding into that number, a rideshare fare stops looking like a simple calculation of distance and time. It's a genuinely strange thing to sit with, that the number glowing on your screen right before you tap confirm might have less to do with the road ahead of you and more to do with a quiet prediction about you specifically made before the car even starts moving. Rideshare pricing looks, on the surface, like it should follow a straightforward formula. Base fare, plus a rate per mile, plus a rate per minute, adjusted upward during high demand. And that formula genuinely is part of the calculation. But according to reporting from technology journalists and findings from academic researchers who have run controlled experiments requesting identical rides from different accounts, rideshare pricing algorithms have been shown to incorporate additional factors that go well beyond the physical trip itself. Things like a rider's phone battery level, the specific device model being used, how far the nearest available driver actually is, and even patterns in a rider's past willingness to accept higher prices without canceling. This means the fare shown to any specific person isn't purely a description of a trip. In part, it's a prediction of what that specific person is likely willing to pay for it. That distinction matters more than it might first appear, because it quietly shifts the entire relationship between rider and price. A meter that reads distance and time treats every passenger identically. The road doesn't know or care who's sitting in the back seat. A model trained to estimate individual price sensitivity does the opposite by design. Its entire purpose is to treat different passengers differently whenever the data suggests it's profitable to do so. Let's start with the basic mechanics of how rideshare pricing typically gets calculated, because there are genuinely two layers happening at once, and the confusion between them is exactly where a lot of the mystery lives. The first layer is the base calculation, distance, estimated time, and a real-time demand multiplier tied to the current ratio of riders requesting trips to drivers available nearby, commonly the mechanism behind what most people call surge pricing. This layer is relatively transparent and widely explained by rideshare companies themselves. The second layer, sometimes referred to in industry discussions as personalized or dynamic pricing, applies an additional adjustment on top of that base calculation, one generated by a machine learning model trained on enormous datasets of past rides, cancellations, and completed payments. The technical process works like this. The model ingests dozens of signals about the specific request being made right now, compares them against patterns from millions of historical rides, and outputs a probability estimate for how price-sensitive this particular rider is likely to be at this particular moment, then nudges the final fare accordingly within a range still bounded by the base calculation. This is where an invisible mechanism kicks in that virtually no rider ever sees, explained inside the app itself. A model like this doesn't need to know anything personal about you in a creepy, individually targeted way to produce wildly different fares for two people standing next to each other. It only needs signals correlated, even loosely, with willingness to pay. A low phone battery percentage, for instance, has been specifically referenced in research and reporting as a signal some pricing systems weight, on the theory that someone worried about their phone dying is less likely to spend time comparison shopping between apps or waiting for a cheaper ride later. Someone requesting a ride from an expensive neighborhood, someone using a newer or more expensive phone model, or someone who has a history of accepting rides even when a surge multiplier was active, can all get quietly nudged toward a fair estimate that reflects predicted tolerance rather than pure trip cost.
There is a related invisible mechanism tied to how these systems handle price experimentation directly. Some rideshare companies have publicly acknowledged running structured tests where different users, or the same user across different sessions, are shown slightly different fares for comparable trips specifically to measure how fare sensitivity affects booking rates, essentially a live, ongoing pricing experiment running in the background of an app that looks, from the rider's side, like a simple, fixed calculation. This is functionally similar to how e-commerce websites test different prices on different visitors to find the number that maximizes total revenue across a large population, except most riders have no visible indication that this kind of testing is even a possibility, since the interface presents a single, seemingly objective dollar figure with no visible range or explanation attached. Two real-world examples make this pattern especially concrete. A widely reported academic study had researchers request rides using new accounts configured with different phone battery levels and device types, and found measurable, repeatable differences in quoted fares for otherwise identical trips, differences the companies involved characterized as coincidental or explainable by other factors, while researchers maintained the pattern was statistically significant across many trials. A second pattern shows up in reporting on rideshare driver forums and passenger complaint threads, where riders have documented screenshots of two phones, sometimes from the same household, requesting the identical route at the identical moment and receiving noticeably different price quotes, a pattern common enough that price-checking with a friend's phone before booking has become a small, semi-common consumer habit in online advice communities. Some of these threads even describe household members deliberately alternating which phone books the ride each time, treating it almost like a small ongoing experiment to figure out whose account tends to be quoted the lower fare on a given night. This challenges the common assumption that a rideshare fare represents an objective, formula-based price purely reflecting the cost and difficulty of a specific trip, the same way a taximeter historically ticked up based on distance and time alone, visible and identical to any passenger in the backseat. In reality, a meaningful portion of modern rideshare pricing incorporates a probabilistic guess about the individual person requesting the ride, layered on top of the trip's actual physical cost. The friction point isn't necessarily that the practice is secretly malicious. Companies have often framed it as standard revenue optimization common across many digital industries. It is that the interface presents a single number with the visual authority of an objective calculation, while the underlying process is considerably more personalized and probabilistic than that presentation suggests. Zoom out, and this same personalized pricing logic shows up constantly beyond ride-sharing. Airlines have long been known to adjust displayed fares based on browsing history and device signals, which is part of why travel advice frequently recommends clearing cookies or using a private browsing window before booking a flight. E-commerce platforms test different prices for the same product across different user segments, sometimes based on location, device type, or browsing behavior, to identify the price point that maximizes revenue for each group rather than showing one universal number to everyone. In every one of these systems, the price on the screen looks like a fixed, external fact about the product or trip, when in reality it is frequently the output of a model estimating something about the specific person looking at that screen in that specific moment. Hotel booking sites, grocery delivery apps, and even some streaming subscription tiers have faced similar scrutiny over the years, each accused at some point of quietly varying a headline price based on signals about the visitor rather than any change in the underlying product itself. The common thread across all of them isn't a specific industry, it is simply that whenever a company has enough data about individual behavior and enough flexibility in how it displays a price, the temptation to let that price flex person by person tends to show up sooner or later. So the next time two phones show two different fares for what looks like the exact same ride, it is worth remembering what that number actually represents. It probably isn't a glitch, and it probably isn't simply a snapshot of current traffic and distance. It is more likely the visible output of a system quietly estimating not just how far you're going, but how much it thinks you're willing to pay to get there, a number shaped as much by a prediction about you specifically as by the road between where you are and where you're headed.